So the solution to this would be to read the sources, but the problem is the people don't read the sources directly in Latin. So here is what we find usually in English, but there is a mistake, and that's what's creating this problem. So let me address it. In a lot of different places, this is what we read. So we're reading from Vegetius, book 1, and in the post-exercise section, we are told that they gave their recruits round bucklers woven with willows, twice as heavy as those used on real service. And I actually really don't like the word buckler here because it does actually say scuta in Latin, as we'll see, but whatever. And wooden swords double the weight of the common ones. They exercised them with these at the post both morning and afternoon. So you read this, you're like, oh, they're giving them rudis, but they're double weight. How's it possible? That's the problem. English is the problem. This isn't translated correctly. And it doesn't matter which version of the Re Militari you read that is in English, that's what you find. Let's jump into the Latin. Okay, so I'll put a link if you want to read this and you're like, but wait, Metatron, I don't know Latin. It's fine. Just take it, take the section, copy paste it into Google Translate, and you'll be fine. But here I'll do it for you so I can be a little more. So we are on book 1, Liber 1, and section 11. So Vegetius is telling us about what the ancients were writing in books, and we read, Scuta de vimine, shields made of wicker, duplum pondus gratis aberet. So double the weight. So we are having shields made of wicker that are double weight as compared to the regular issued scuta used by legionaries normally. My lead researcher actually had one of these because he does living history. He had one of these made, double weight, absolutely doable with wicker. Now, look at this. Idemque. This means in the same way, clauas ligneas. This does not mean sword. And that's that it's not using rudis. You do find rudis, by the way, in this entire book a couple of times, and because it's talking about the training. But in this specific issue, in this specific section, it's not calling it rudis. It's calling it clauas ligneas. And then it tells us dupli aeque ponderis pro gladis. So it has the double weight of the gladius, gladi. So what is a clauas ligneas? You can translate it in English as a slat, S-L-A-T, not with a U, like a piece of wood, maybe a club could be a good translation. These are wooden clubs. These are not, the double weight ones are wooden clubs or slats that are used to train at the palos, the stake. These are not used for combat. The rudis are used for full contact sparring by the legionaries, and those would be in fact lighter than regularly issued gladi, about 300 grams most likely. These are two different implements. The ones that are double are clauas. But now that we have established this, what about the weight? Can you make these double weight of a metal gladius? Absolutely. Because remember, a metal gladius is around 500 to 800 grams in weight, historically, which means that all you need to do is to create a wooden club that is about 1.5 kilograms. Absolutely doable. Absolutely doable, considering the fact that these do not need to have necessarily the shape of a rudis, because they are not rudis. This is the crux of the matter. It's a translation mistake, imprecision in the English versions, but once you have access to the original Latin, you immediately spot, oh, it's a clauas. In Italian, it's very simple for me to pick it up, because clava lignea is how I would say it in Italian, clauas ligneas. It's very similar. To me, it just sounds, oh, of course, it's a clava. It's a freaking clava. If you're Italian, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But even if you're not, it's a wooden club. That's what they use, that they're double weight, and they only use them ad palos, morning and afternoon, to build up the muscle. So rather than just calling it for BS, read the sources in Latin first, is my suggestion in this case. Not trying to attack. I'm just saying, next time, I think I would suggest to do this, because your experience that you have described, making wooden gladi for a year, is absolutely coherent with the sources, because yeah, they were 300 grams around, and they used them, the actual rudis were used for full contact sparring, though double ones are for the palos, the stake training. There is a whole article that I will link down below that actually talks about whether or not, from a modern perspective, scientifically, it actually does make sense to train with double weapon, like double shield, double sword. Would you actually have benefits? And the reality is, it's a little bit contested, it's a little bit debated. It seems like it's not a great idea. This, of course, doesn't mean that the ancients didn't believe it. There could be a placebo aspect to it. Many practitioners of sword art praise the use of training with a much heavier weapon than their normal one. The general argument is that doing so is good for conditioning as well as to train more explosive speed when switching back to the normal weighted sword. Certainly, this attitude can be historically justified. Vegetius wrote of using heavier weapons to train against targets in 4th century Rome. I appreciate that he does specify target here because, as we see, that's exactly what we're talking about. And even on the other half of the hemisphere, the Japanese sometimes use a heavier wooden sword called a suborito for strength training. There is a strong case to be made, however, that this method causes more harm than good. In fact, data shows that a practitioner may be better off doing the exact opposite and train with a weapon that is lighter than the normal one. So with this, I'd like to say I personally think there is nothing wrong with what Vegetius suggests, but I would of course only use it, as he says, to train at the freaking stake. So if I'm doing sparring, if I'm doing full contact, and if I'm doing anything else really with a sword, I would use either lighter ones or regular weight. And then he's talking about the loss of precision. And then there is a whole study about baseball. And now, I don't know how much this can translate to sword training in the military in ancient Rome, but it is an interesting read nonetheless. In baseball, so let's keep in mind this is a little bit of an outer topic, it is quite common to see players use weighted bats for the exact reason some swordsmen do. Similarly, they will sometimes use a normal weighted bat and tie it to a rubber exercise band for resistance to simulate a heavier one, something that some HEMA practitioners are now advising. Players also like to do this as a warm-up to prime their muscles right before going to bat during a game. On the surface, it seems to make sense that swinging a heavier bat or sword will make using a lighter one much easier, right? According to the research, the opposite is true. In fact, it is becoming the norm for baseball coaches to stop their players from doing this. Studies from the last couple of decades show that the benefits are all in the player's imagination. I don't know if they're all in the player's imagination, but then again, in the book Motor Learning and Performance, authors Richard A. Schmidt and Timothy D. Lee talk about the findings. So let's read this. 8 baseball and softball players accepted 3 sets of 15 bat swinging during which they hit a ball suspended on a cord. Batters performed the first 5 swings and last 5 swings in each set with a regular, non-weighted bat, and the middle 5 swings with a weighted bat. They were asked to estimate swing speed at bat weight, compared with the speed and weight they perceived during the first 5 unweighted swings, following the 5th weighted swing, and after the 1st, 3rd, and 5th unweighted swings. Actual swing speed did not increase following swings with a weighted bat, but batters perceived their swings to be faster and their bats to feel lighter. Yeah, that's the placebo aspect of it. For 5 of the 8 participants, this illusion lasted for at least 4 unweighted swings. In another study, Sutter and Groomer 2003, the normal swing pattern of experienced batters was found to be altered, and their swing speed slower down for up to 5 swings following a warm-up with a weighted bat. The results of these studies suggest that batters would be better off taking warm-up. Yeah, okay. So this is to me, it's interesting, but it's absolutely inconclusive because first, it's too small. Like you do 15 swings is nothing. You need to train for 6 months as a Roman legionary and then see, because that's, I think, what they were doing. I'm not necessarily disagreeing, but I'm saying it's not a good example of what Vegetius was saying, because if you use this wooden club we have discussed and you do it for months, you'll build up muscle. And I don't think it will influence how effective or precise you are when you use the actual weapon, because when they fight, they're using the rudis. So I do think that after a few months, there could be some benefits in the sense that you could build up some muscle by doing that. Now, whether or not that's the optimal way of doing it, that's what we can discuss, I suppose.